What's going on, everybody? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. Yesterday, I went over the top 10 running backs post-combine. You can watch that video. I think it should be right here if you guys want to check it out. But today, we are going over top 10 wide receivers post-combine. I'm excited to get into it, but before we do, if you guys could, go down and give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. So you guys have any fantasy football questions, please let me know. I'd love to help you all out, especially Dynasty trades at this time of year. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another video. But with that, guys, let's hop right into it with our first tier. The first wide receiver I want to talk about should be no surprise to most people. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is just a tier above the rest, and we saw that at the Combine. For one, he showed off elite agility, grading in the top 1% of all players at the Combine in the shuttle and three-cone, and he had the fastest shuttle since 2014, and the fourth fastest since 2007. I mean, that's just crazy to me. You know this guy's going to get open. You know he's going to be able to get separation at the next level, as he did in college. Well, his explosive grade and his composite size was okay. That's not really what we were expecting from Jaxon Smith-Njigba. We weren't expecting him to be that T. Higgins, Calvin Johnson, 6'4" type body. That's just not who he is. He's going to operate more as a slot receiver, which I think gets demonized a lot in the NFL, maybe less so today than it did 10 years ago. But I see him as an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player. And if you're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown with the second and third pick in your Dynasty draft in 1 quarterback leagues and the 5th or 6th pick in 2 quarterback leagues, I'm absolutely fine with that. Love Jaxon Smith-Njigba here. The post-combine wide receiver 2 for me is Quentin Johnston. And I think Quentin Johnston, well, he did not run the 40. What he did participate in proved he could be a good NFL athlete. We saw in the vertical and the broad jump, he performed in the top 3rd percentile in both. And we know he has the height. We know he has the weight. That makes him a great wide receiver. And we've seen him run before. I don't think he's by any means slow. I think he will end up running on his pro day. Should be somewhere in the low 4.5s, high 4.4s, which is absolutely fine for a wide receiver. No less a wide receiver that is 6'4". That's why I put him at number 2. I think he definitely showed more at the Combine than Jordan Addison did, who will still be my number 3 wide receiver despite a poor showing at the Combine. But I'm not usually too big of a fan of these big body type receivers. I feel like more often than not, they end up missing at the NFL level. But Quentin Johnston could be the guy. That proves that to be untrue. We will have to see where he lands in the NFL before I can lock him in at the second best wide receiver. The next wide receiver I want to talk about, and somebody I was kind of debating moving down to the second tier, but has had such a productive collegiate career that I can't justify it just yet. It's Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison, still a phenomenal wide receiver, still a Blitnikoff Award winner, still a great wide receiver. But the problem is his combine was lackluster, to say it politely. I mean, his 40-yard dash, 4.55, not what you expect from a wide receiver that weighs 171 pounds. Just very, very disappointing outing. He didn't have a great 10-yard split, didn't have a great 20-yard split, and didn't have a great 40-yard dash. His vertical explosiveness, not great either. The only test he really tested above average in was the broad jump. He still wasn't even that great. His weight, very poor again. I am concerned. I mean, if he came out and was more like Devonta Smith with his testing, I would have been a little bit more okay with it, but this very much concerns me. I think he could still be a great slot wide receiver at the NFL level. This is just very concerning to me, that's for sure. Still, though, I have to give him props where it's due and put him at the wide receiver 3. The next wide receiver I have is Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers, 4-year prospect coming out of Boston College. I do like Zay Flowers a lot. He definitely shows tons of athleticism on tape. I mean, he blew it away with 4.42 speed. That's low 4.4s right there, which is exactly what you like to see from a prospect that is a little bit on the shorter side, coming in at 5'9", 182 pounds. Well, I don't think he necessarily has the traits to become a dominant wide receiver 1 in the NFL, simply because he doesn't have the size. I think he projects to be a great slot wide receiver, which I think is absolutely fine at the NFL level from a fantasy football perspective, because these type of slot receivers are getting so many targets, just night and day, especially in today's NFL. So I am absolutely fine targeting Zay Jones as my 4th wide receiver off the board. At this point, I would most likely prefer him over Kayshon Boutte, Josh Downs, just based on the athletic testing. The next wide receiver I have is Jalin Hyatt, another guy that blew away the Combine, coming in with a 9.27 RAS score. Tested very, very well in the 40-yard dash, running a 4.41, and his explosive grade is elite, jumping 11'3" in the broad jump, which ranks in the top 1 percentile of all jumpers, and vertical of 40 inches, so we know he has the explosive prowess. The only problem, like most of these wide receivers in this draft class, aside from Quentin Johnston, is the height and weight, weighing in at 176 pounds. Not exactly having prototypical wide receiver 1 height. It is a little bit scary for Jalin Hyatt. And my other problem is I think he does kind of project to be a better NFL player than a fantasy wide receiver, because I think he is going to be utilized primarily due to his speed rather than someone who's going to be getting a lot of passes, which is fine, but I just don't think at the NFL level he's going to be as productive as we expect. Now, with that being said, he still did test elite. That's why I do have him here as my wide receiver 5. But I think he could have room to move down depending on what team he's in. He definitely needs the right quarterback to fit his skill set. With the amount of deep bombs he has the potential to be catching. The next wide receiver I want to talk about is Joshua Downs. And Joshua Downs fits the mold of most of these other wide receivers. Very small body, 5'9", 171-pound receiver. But he has speed to burn. Tested fairly well at the combine with the 4.48 40-yard dash. I like Joshua Downs, but again, I think it matters a ton where he ends up. I've been seeing him mocked to the Giants a lot lately. If he ends up there, I think it'd be okay because there's really no other wide receivers in that situation. He also interviewed with the Bills, which is a promising sign. Maybe not as much so for Gabe Davis because, Gabe Davis is done, I think, at the NFL level being a wide receiver 2. But I'm just unsure as to where Josh Downs will end up. That's why I have him ranked here somewhat conservatively, but I think he still ends up in this tier of players with very light builds, but speed to burn and athleticism up the wazoo. The next guy I want to talk about, and he is the start of my third tier, is Marvin Mims. And Marvin Mims tested very, very similarly to Brandon Cooks, which is pretty interesting to see. Because Brandon Cooks did test 1 very highly, but 2, he's a great wide receiver in the NFL still right now to this day. And I would gladly take Brandon Cooks on my fantasy team. Well, he is old now. I think he's absolutely fine. Marvin Mims testing very, very well in the categories that matter, running a 4.38 with a very, very fast 10 and 20-yard split, as well as having an elite vertical and broad jump, which is exactly what you like to see. 3-cone, maybe. 3-cone was a little bit slower, so I am a tiny bit concerned with that, but still above average. Now, the main concern for him, just like everyone else, is the height and the weight. 183 pounds is not all that great. He is 5'11", so that is a little bit more promising, but still a tiny bit concerned for Marvin Mims' size. Overall, another one of these slot wide receivers where it depends on where he goes. Maybe I can move him up a tier and consider moving him into the same tier as Zay Flowers, Jalin Hyatt, Josh Downs. But for right now, I'd like to see where he goes first before I consider any long-term moving. The next player I want to talk about is Kayshon Boutte, somebody who tested very poorly at the combine, which is sad because it was something he needed as his last season of play was pretty lackluster. Granted, there was pretty bad quarterback play at LSU, but still not really all that great for him. And he comes out and tests very poorly, below average in height and weight. Although he's not like that off with his height and weight, his composite explosiveness grade was very, very poor, jumping in the top 5% of all people in the vertical jump, and in the broad jump, he wasn't really all that great either, testing below the 50th percentile. Pretty sad. His 40-yard dash was pretty good, testing above average with a 4.5, but not something that blows your socks off, especially not for someone like Kayshon Boutte. And his shuttle, again, was about average. Kayshon Boutte is somebody I still like, but at this point, I can't really justify drafting him over some of these other players with as poor of a combine and as poor of a performance he had in college over the past year. I just really can't trust it. Again, it depends on landing spot, but right here, Kayshon Boutte, somebody who I thought was going to be great, and I thought was going to have a phenomenal combine, and came out disappointed. The guy I have right after him, Rashee Rice, on the other hand, had a great combine, grading in at 9.35 RAS, meaning he's in the top 7th percentile of all wide receivers coming out since 2003. Very, very good. Has above average size, above average speed grade, testing a 4.51 in the 40-yard dash, which again is around what Kayshon Boutte tested as. But when you also pair that with an elite explosive grade, grading out very, very nicely in the vertical and broad jump, testing out in the top 2 percentile in vertical and top 10% in broad jump. You know you have an explosive wide receiver right here. My main concern for Rashee Rice and the fact that I don't have him higher is because he didn't really take off as a receiving threat until his senior season. I mean, never eclipsing 700 yards in college until his senior year. And at that point, you're a 22-year-old playing against 18-year-olds, which, I mean, of course you're going to dominate. If you're a 22-year-old and great wide receiver playing against people who have no chance of getting drafted. But with that being said, I still have to give Rashee Rice his props because he tested so well at the combine. Again, it does matter where he ends up. But right now he's looking like an early to mid day 2 pick, which is absolutely fine draft capital at the wide receiver position. The last guy I want to talk about, and this is a teardrop, and this is also a shot in the dark. Kind of like in my last video, I threw Israel Abanikanda as my 10th guy. I mean, this guy's testing was absolutely elite. I'm talking about Bryce Ford-Wheaton. Well, the draft capital he's getting isn't great. His combine testing was among the best ever, which is absolutely crazy to me. I mean, someone from RAS tweeted that their RAS was the second best ever, only behind Calvin Johnson. And, well, I don't think this guy's going to be Calvin Johnson. It's a great company to be in. He was unfortunately demoted just a tiny bit from a 10 to a 9.97, but that still puts him in the top 1% of wide receivers athletically of all time. Now, the problem is he didn't have the production in college to back it up, never eclipsing 700 wide receiving yards at the college level. I just think this athleticism might be too good to pass up on. And of course, again, it depends on landing spot, it depends on draft capital. But looking at how crazy his RAS grades were, I just had to throw him on here as the 10th guy. Let me know what you guys think down below, though. Let me know if there's anybody you would rather have in your top 10. If there's anybody you think I am absolutely whiffing on, let me know down below. I'd like to hear it. I'm always interested in new takes, expanding my horizons. And if you wouldn't mind giving this video a like, would mean the world to me. Totally get it. If not, you can leave a dislike as well. If you disagree with this stuff, I don't mind. Just let me know down below why you disliked the video. And subscribe to the channel. Turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another video. With that, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.